After having spent the whole week on map scrolling, I was looking forward to doing something different this week, but the universe had other plans. The machine wouldn't boot anymore. I checked the compact flash card on my MacBook and I was able to read it, but the volume name and some file names were scrambled. I tried a second card, but that one didn't work at all. Unfortunately, the floppy drive was also broken, which meant I had to prepare a new card from scratch. So I dusted off my 15-year-old Intel MacBook, reinstalled VirtualBox because the old installation was also broken. Why the hell is everything broken in this house? I downloaded a FreeDOS image, and while waiting I read a tutorial to make sure I wouldn't mess this up, and then I waited a frustratingly long time until it was done. I put the card into the machine and it didn't work. I repeated the whole process using a different card, but nope. Different error message though. And that was it. My time was up. I hadn't written a single line of code. Even worse, I still couldn't use the machine. The retro machine was still broken, so I had to switch to my MacBook. Maybe it was a sign that I should work on image loading. So I opened Sprite, recreated the hard-coded animation and exported the sprite sheet. I started working on a little demo program to load and display an image, but then I remembered I don't remember how to open and read files in Pascal. After skimming the docs and one of my books, I figured I was ready to read the first byte. But I wasn't. I then learned, or I guess relearned, that assign just assigns a file name to a variable, and to actually open a file you have to call reset. Now, reset also does what it says. It sets the position to the beginning of the file. I don't know, it just feels like whoever designed that API was really lazy. But there's nothing I can do about it, so let's move on. I chose the PCX file format.
Now that's a name I've not heard in a long time.
Not because it's great, but because it's simple. Just 128 bytes of header, most of which I don't even need or care about, run length encoded image data, and an optional palette I chose to ignore. There's really not much you can mess up, but of course I did. After fixing the little whoopsie, I was able to load and display my sprite sheet. The game code was getting too long and I wanted to add more structure to the project anyway, so I decided the image loading stuff would be the first unit. I copied the code into a new file and restructured it into a unit and turned the implementation into a class. A simple task that takes, 2 minutes in a modern IDE with refactoring support? I needed 15, but I also had to look up how to structure units, so I guess it wasn't that bad. So at the end of the day, the result on the screen was exactly the same as before, but all the meat was gone from the demo program. Being able to extract individual sprites from a sprite sheet would be the easiest way to integrate the new image loading with the existing code. So I did just that, made the necessary changes, removed the hard-coded sprites, and it looked exactly the same. Of course. I also wanted to get rid of the hard-coded map tiles, so I opened Sprite again, created a tile set and integrated it, but it didn't look that great. So back to Sprite. The good thing was that it was really easy to add more tiles now. After a lot of tile editing and map tweaking, the game looked, well, I guess you could say better. Not great, but now it could potentially look great if a talented artist put their hands on it. Since I was already extracting hard-coded stuff, it was the right time to move this map monstrosity into its own file. This would also let me get rid of the commas, which would make editing the map easier. It was fascinating to see how incredibly slow search and replace was in this IDE. Still faster than doing it manually, but slow enough to watch every single replacement happen. One thing that amazes me every day I work on this project is how I still can't wrap my head around some things. Implementing this load map procedure was a good example. As you can see, as a first step, I just wanted to dump the map to the console, expecting read to return something, but of course it didn't. It's a procedure, not a function. And if you're thinking, well, that's not too crazy, it's just like in C, right? Sure, but I also haven't written much C in recent years, and in most of the languages I've used, whatever the function was called, it returned something. Now, speaking of naming, I really like this convention. Verbs are actions that mutate state. Nouns are queries that return something, typically the same thing every time you call them. You know, determinism is a good thing in software. So read is actually a good name for a procedure. It also does mutate state, which is the position in the file. But then again, there's also read key, a function that reads one key from the keyboard buffer and returns it. So Pascal's naming isn't all that consistent. Anyway, I eventually used readLine to read whole lines and then wanted to iterate over the individual characters in a for loop. Now, what's the correct way to get the length of a string? A combination of muscle memory and common sense made me type string length and expected it to work, but no. It's only for p-chars. Length was the right answer. I've gotten used to Pascal's for loop and added the -1 almost out of habit to avoid the off by 1 mistakes I've been making way too many times in the past 2 weeks, only to see this weird p show up in the first column. And then I remembered strings in Pascal hold the length in the first byte. So I started at 1 and of course forgot to remove the -1, so I was off by 1 again. Also, my map array started at 0, and when I transferred the tile information, I forgot to subtract 1 from x, so there was another off by 1, which I only noticed when I saw the missing column on the screen. After I changed the map, I realized the last column was missing too, but eventually all off by 1s were gone. Now it should be easy to make the map bigger, right? Well, yes and no. The code was still relying on hard-coded values like map width and map height, and I didn't like the idea of just one fixed map size. I also wanted more structure, so I started extracting the map code to another unit. Speaking of naming again, it also turned out to be a little harder than necessary in Pascal. You can't have a variable map of type map that's defined in a unit called map, so I called the unit map, the type game map, and the variable the map. Yeah. But that's enough complaining for now. Naming aside, it felt good to clean things up and make them more cohesive. Extending the map was easy, so in the end it was all gravy. So let's see. I've extracted the map, the hard-coded sprite, and the static map tiles. What's missing? Right, the animated water tile. So I opened Sprite again to recreate the water animation. Well, not just recreate, improve. Why did I do that? I mean, I came up with something, it's debatable if it's really an improvement, but I thought so at the time. Oh right, I was also back at the retro machine. A replacement floppy drive was in the mail and I was able to format and install MS-DOS on one of my compact flash cards, and it felt good to be back. So, after putting it all together, I thought there had to be something wrong with it. And something was definitely still glitchy in the animation code, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was that my animation just sucked. But I didn't want to waste more time on pixel art. The week was coming to an end and I didn't feel like I'd made much progress, at least not when it came to actual gameplay. I wanted to give the two enemies a bit more range of movement, so I copied over some of the collision detection code, but I quickly realized this was another area that needed some care. But that wasn't a task to start on a Friday, so I just made it work, tweaked the map, and watched them move around the level doing magic tricks. But like I said, there's still a lot to improve.